What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to do a comic book review. I haven't done one of these in a while. Today I want to talk to you about Gravity Falls: Lost Legends. This is an original graphic novel that is a spin-off of the animated series Gravity Falls. I haven't talked about that series a ton on this channel, a little bit over the years, but Gravity Falls is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I think it is really solid from beginning to end. You often will have a cartoon that starts off really strong and loses that strength as it goes on. It isn't consistently good. Gravity Falls is just great. I think there's less than 5 episodes that I would say I'm not a big fan of, maybe even less than 3. I think overall that series is just really, really rock solid. And I was not sure what this would be like getting into this book. A lot of times you have a TV series that ends either prematurely or ends when the creators wanted it to end, like in the case of Gravity Falls, and then you will find out there's going to be a comic book sequel. I'm really thinking about Angel After the Fall, which was a sequel to the Joss Whedon vampire television series, and I was absolutely in love with the premise of that, but then the book just wasn't very good. And I was afraid we were going to get something like that here, and fortunately we did not. Now, I should say, this is written by Alex Hirsch, who was the creator of Gravity Falls, and while he wasn't behind everything in the series, he was kind of the mastermind. He was there kind of okaying a lot of the decisions being made in the show. And there are several artists who worked on this book. Some of them are people who actually worked on the show, so that was kind of nice to see. We had Joe Pitt, Ian Whirl, and Dana Terrace. Dana Terrace you might know as the mastermind behind the TV show Owl House. I've never seen that, but I really want to. But those 3 names I actually recognized as people who worked on the show. If you watch the show, there's Pitt Cola that they drink. Pitt Cola was apparently named after Joe Pitt. So there are people who worked on the show who did have a hand in this book. So that was kind of nice. You also had people like Asaf Hanuka, Jacob Shabbat, Jim Campbell, Kyle Smealy, Meredith Gran, Mike Holmes, Priscilla Tang, Tarina Hernandez, Stephanie Ramirez, and Valerie Hala. So a lot of names here that I did not recognize. Some of them may have worked on the show, and I just didn't immediately recognize their names reading through the credits here. But basically the premise here is that once every 1,000 years, Shmebulok the gnome can speak in actual human language and not just say his name. We find out that a warlock cursed him to only speak his name except for one day every 1,000 years. And so he is kind of your storyteller here, kind of like the Crypt Keeper telling you a story. That's kind of what's going on here with Shmebulok, and he tells you 4 stories set in the world of Gravity Falls. You have one of them where Dipper and Pacifica have to work together because a monster stole Mabel's face. You have one story where Mabel gets lost in the multiverse, and Stanford and Stanley, they go searching for her. There's one story where Stanley, Grunkle Stan, gets trapped in a comic book, and a gang has to go and save him. And then there's one story that's when the Stan twins were little kids. And overall, I really like this. Now, I would say, if you've never seen the series, this is not a good place to start. I think you really should watch the series before you get this. And you might say, who would be an idiot enough to get this before watching the show? You never know. I got this as a gift, actually, and I believe it was pre-owned whenever it was bought, so someone might have seen this somewhere and said, I don't know much about what this is, but maybe it's cheap wherever they got it, and I'll just go ahead and check it out. I'm just at that level of curiosity. I know I have done that before with tie-in books. I had a book, one of the first things I reviewed on my channel was called Zombie Reanimated. It was a graphic novel that tied into a video game, I think, and I had never played the video game, never read the novel that was part of that world, just read the graphic novel, and for a long time I would get people commenting on that video saying, well, if you go play the game or if you go read the novel, then this explains that. So this is not a good starting point for Gravity Falls. Fortunately, we live in a world now where Shout Factory has put the entire Gravity Falls series on DVD, and I already had that series on DVD. I've watched through it multiple times since getting it on DVD, and this was good for me because these are 4 pretty good stories, and it tickles that Gravity Falls fancy without me falling down the rabbit hole of rewatching the entire series again. Not a bad thing, but sometimes if you don't have time to go through an entire series again when you have an itch that you want to scratch, this might be good. You could read this in an afternoon. And I guess I'll talk briefly about each of the stories. I really like the Pacifica Dipper one. That one's got a lot of fun Easter eggs with the world of Gravity Falls. Something I was talking about when I was talking about Angel After the Fall, I did reviews on those books many years ago, and something I said then was when you have a TV series, you have a limited cast that you can work with. And then once Whedon and Brian Lynch, and I don't remember who the artists were on that book, once they started doing After the Fall, suddenly it felt like, okay, we've got the keys to the toy box. We can just throw every toy onto the floor and play with all of them at once. So they were bringing back characters that we hadn't seen in the series for a while, and it felt really crowded in a 22-page monthly comic. It didn't feel as focused as the series did, and I was kind of afraid that we were going to get something like that here, and fortunately that is not the case. Each story has a good focus, a narrative focus, and also focus on the characters. We don't throw every character from Gravity Falls into this book. There are a lot of characters that you might be sad you don't get a chance to see. We don't get a chance to see any of the police officers, Deputy Derland and Sheriff Blubbs. We don't get to see them. We don't get to see any of Wendy's friends, like Robbie and Tambry and all of them. But we get a lot of fun little visual Easter eggs, especially in the Dipper Pacifica story. And I'm sure there are some that I didn't catch, but I would see something and I was like, I don't remember what episode that's from, but I know that I remember seeing it somewhere. And then there were many things I could recognize. And then that one I really liked. And then we get one where Grunkle Stan gets trapped in a comic book, and I like that one. I don't know if any people who watch Gravity Falls, if they're younger than I am, I don't know if they're going to get as much of a kick out of this as I am. I was able to recognize a lot of comic book styles. There's one page that's kind of making fun of Mike Mignola's artwork, and that I don't know if a teenager who was a big fan of Gravity Falls when they were a kid, if they read this, do they know anything about Hellboy? Are they going to know what this is a reference to? And then there was a reference to Mad Magazine, the comic portions of Mad Magazine from 50 years ago, and I'm almost certain nobody's going to recognize that. I actually had to see, there was a line of dialogue where Seuss said, oh, we're in the comic book Schmad Schmagazine. If he hadn't said that, I would have been second-guessing myself, like, what is this parodying? And then there's references to Archie Comics, references to, I don't remember the company, but the company that did, like, Wendy and Casper the Friendly Ghost and Richie Rich, that company, there's a style here for one page that's very similar to that. We get a little bit of Charlie Brown, references to Garfield. I know Alex Hirsch is not a big fan of Garfield, so you could see a little bit more mean-spirited parody here, and then some of it might not be as mean-spirited. But that was a lot of fun, but if you are a diehard Gravity Falls fan, but you don't read a lot of comic books, that one, a lot of the references might go over your head. And then we get a story where Mabel is trapped in the multiverse with a whole bunch of other Mabels, and she has to realize that she needs to be a little less self-centered than she has been this summer. And that was weird because it was set after almost the entire series. It's set it's kind of in between the last moments of the series finale, and it's weird because I feel like Mabel had already learned that she was being really self-centered that summer in the Weirdmageddon finale, and then she goes through that lesson again. And I feel like when you listen to the commentaries, Alex Hirsch almost seems to like Mabel more than some of the other characters. And I wouldn't say I dislike Mabel, although it does sound like it when I'm about to say what I'm about to say, but she is probably a character I like less than all of the other characters. So it certainly sounds like I'm saying that she's my least favorite character, and it's not that I disdain her, but a lot of times I did not like her as much as all the other characters. And I don't know if I would ever say she was full-on self-centered. I think sometimes she was blind to the needs of other people. For example, there was the puppet episode where she finally sacrificed something for herself for what her brother needed, and that was a good episode. And then she's having this flashback to all these other times where Dipper had to sacrifice something for her, and I wouldn't say she was deliberately self-centered. So this one was a little weird in that it introduces the idea that she is self-centered, and then she has to overcome that when she meets all these other Mabels, and that was fun seeing all these other versions of Mabel. Kind of felt a little Rick and Morty-ish, and I don't know how deliberate that is, because I know there is a stealth crossover between Gravity Falls and Rick and Morty between the two shows with portals. And then the last story is a Grunkle Ford and Grunkle Stan when they were kids, and that one might be my least favorite. It's weird because we know what happens with these guys, and we know that eventually their dad kind of kicks Stan out of the family, and this story is all about Grunkle Stan trying to, I guess, make things right with his dad a little bit when he was a kid, and it's really heartbreaking reading that when you know what's going to happen. And as far as I know, Stan never did make things up with his dad. His dad basically said, "You've ruined your brother's future, I don't want you part of this family anymore." And so it's really bad reading this and thinking, okay, I know where this is all going, and sure, eventually the brothers do patch things up with each other, but the family is still broken at some point after this story takes place. So it was a little hard reading that one. And also there's this one part where it's introduced that Grunkle Ford, of course he's not a Grunkle yet, but he feels self-conscious about his sixth finger, and then like the following page, him having a sixth finger kind of helps the boys out because they need some information from some circus freaks, and they're like, oh, you have a sixth finger, you're one of us, we'll help you. Really weird that they set that up and then immediately deal with that. I wish they could have somehow found a way to draw that out a little bit, set it up earlier in the story, and then pay it off later. But really, that one is my least favorite, and it's not a bad story. I still had a lot of fun reading it. It's still enjoyable. This might be the one that you could hand to somebody and say, read this, if they had no knowledge of Gravity Falls and if they had no intention of watching Gravity Falls, because this would obviously spoil a gigantic mystery in a series, and I hope that you guys don't plan on watching Gravity Falls, because I have now spoiled this thing from the series. But you don't find out Grunkle Stan has a twin until like halfway through season 2. So that one is probably the weakest part of the book, but overall I really like this. And you might be asking, who is this for if you've never watched Gravity Falls? I would say if you are as big of a Gravity Falls as I am, as big of a fan of Gravity Falls as I am, this isn't necessary, but it is very enjoyable, and you will enjoy it if you enjoy the series. If you felt the need, the burning desire to buy the series on DVD when it came out, you will probably want to go ahead and pick up a copy of this, and that's my recommendation for it. So I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to check me out later in the week. I will have some other videos up for you. In the meantime, I will see you guys later. Have a good one.